Okay, this is from the book How to Raise IQ and Become a Genius. This is part 2 of chapter 1. And, what it's basically about is how do you motivate yourself to a level where you can do very high level achievement. And one of the secrets of great achievement is you have to have a very high energy level because you have to sustain an intense effort over a prolonged amount of time, for days, months, weeks, years. So how do you get that? And that's why you need all this philosophical stuff to energize yourself. Okay? Because lots of people have a reasonable amount of ability, but there's not many people who can push themselves to a higher level. Okay, Ralph Waldo Emerson, you become what you think about. And also the schools can't do it because the schools are atheistic, Darwinistic, life has no meaning, bleak places. They're just to really condition you, brain, wash you. Okay, so it has to come from the individual, from the family. And you'll see it's very common in geniuses that the person who taught the children was their father, kind of taught them how to think, taught them how to have academic intellectual goals. All right, Ralph Waldo Emerson, you become what you think about. And the idea has been around a long time that if you focus on something, you get good at it. Proverbs, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Strive to focus your efforts on the goal. That's what Goethe would say. We must continually try to focus on a narrow goal. That's how you get good at something. Okay, Charles Dickens, a little key will open a large door. All right, Lewis Terman was a Stanford IQ researcher, and he he called a genius somebody with an IQ of 140 or more. That's actually not that high of an IQ. It's just a little over, 99% in that ballpark. But out of all his students with IQs of 140 and up, none of them won a Nobel Prize. But then 2 of his students who didn't quite make the 140 cutoff, they actually did win a Nobel Prize. For the purpose of this book, I'll define a genius as somebody with an IQ of 160, based on the idea of normal IQ being about 100. 4 standard deviations put you at 160. And when I say 160, I mean within a given domain, not in everything, but in a given domain, whatever the field of interest is at the moment. Okay. And you can increase your IQ, I would predict, in the ballpark of 30 points if you're super motivated. You have to be real motivated. The average lazy, incurious person, they're not going to do anything. But a person who really wants to push, they can do make tremendous improvements. Okay. And you take somebody who's got an average IQ like 100, and they're not really going to be capable of, getting into med school, getting through med school. But if they learn all these study skill techniques, get motivated in time management, they can easily perform at that level. Okay. I think my genetic IQ, I don't even know what it is. Let me guess 130, but I made it so that I could function at a 160 or even 170 level in areas that I'm interested in. Because I see other doctors, they can understand this stuff faster than me, but they don't have much intellectual curiosity beyond just getting their job done, doing a good job at work, and then going home and spend time with their family. Versus, if you want to constantly learn and build yourself up, then you keep learning. Okay, and you get teased about it. When you're good at sports, everybody likes it. When you're good at academics, people just mock you. Say, oh, you're only good at academics in school and taking tests. Other than that, you're stupid. Stephen Hawking, he said, people who talk about IQs are losers. And again, I said that before. If you're going to be good at something, you got to talk about it. I resemble that remark. The Stooges. We used to always joke about the Three Stooges when we were young. I read about Hawking as a physicist, and I actually thought he was kind of FOS, full of it. And I read that he got quadriplegia from amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS. But then I saw that despite the fact he was quadriplegic in the hospital, he was able to seduce several nurses. And I was impressed by that. I thought, wow, he must be a genius after all. That sick and you could seduce the nurses? Mr. Romeo Hawkins can say what he likes, but I think he's wrong. If you want to improve something, you got to talk about it. There's a nice Philippians quote, whatsoever things are true, good, and smart, think on these things. Okay, now if you listen to the academic professors, people like Jordan Peterson, he knows a lot about IQ testing, but he doesn't know anything about IQ improvement. It's so obvious. I can prove it in 5 seconds that you can increase IQ. Okay, typical person drinking tap water. Well, it's got aluminum in there, neurotoxin. It's got glyphosate, neurotoxin. Those estrogenic chemicals are typically neurotoxic. Like I just gave a video about that, how they're not just estrogenic disrupting chemicals, they're neurologic disrupting chemicals. So you filter your water. Reverse osmosis. Now you avoid all those chemicals. You stop eating processed foods. You avoid the food dyes, fungal inhibitors, the mold inhibitors. There are also mitochondria inhibitors. you're going to get better brain function. You avoid things like aspartame, things that activate the glutamate receptors. You avoid sleep deprivation. You minimize your stress. By focusing and not going out to parties and stuff. You avoid alcohol, neurotoxin. You avoid marijuana, neurotoxin. You avoid tobacco, neurotoxin. Okay, all of a sudden, your academic performance is going to improve. It's obvious. I mean, what could be more obvious than that? You learn study skills, academic performance improves. You learn memory techniques, academic performance improves. You learn time management, academic performance improves. You sit in the front row, you pay more attention, you're not distracted, academic performance improves. So you want to do all these little things, and each one might only give you 1 or 2% improvement, but they add up, and all of a sudden, that's a big improvement. And the reason the professors can't do it is, number one, they don't believe they can do it. Number two, they got this atheistic Darwinism approach that life is meaningless and you're just a talking monkey. And they use Skinner box rewards and punishments rather than, talking to you and saying, what do you want to accomplish? What do you want to do? Here's how we can help you to do it, okay? All right, so they're not, as brutal as they used to be in the schools, like Oliver Twist, where they whip you. But what they do instead is if you misbehave, kid's hyper, they'll drug you. Okay, here's Andrew Carnegie, the big business tycoon. He said, external rewards are never strong enough to push somebody to genius. You can't push a person up a ladder. They have to want to climb it. Okay, and then the college professors and stuff, they don't believe in, God or talk about love or lust or personal destiny, growth mindset. So they can't motivate anybody. They just don't have the tools that it takes. Like I said, the psychology of Christianity is better than the psychology of psychology. They also tell you that you're just a talking monkey based on atheistic Darwinism, which is nonsense. When you look more closely at the regulatory DNA, the so-called junk DNA, it's mostly regulatory. Lots of it is regulatory DNA, and it's much more different than chimpanzees than was previously recognized. Okay, any college professor that would talk about intelligent design, they'll get fired as a heretic. It's a religion, atheistic Darwinism. It's much less scientific than people think. Okay, what can get you going? The other thing, too, the schools do is they demoralize the students. They teach them the worst books, Kill a Mockingbird, Catcher in the Rye, Great Expectations, Julius Caesar for freshmen in high school. Then they recommend Hemingway and Sartre, and they recommend Virginia Woolf. They all, don't get me wrong, Hemingway, you can learn a little bit from him when you're older, but not when you're young. And all these writers, they suck. They're depressing. Camus, you don't want them. Virginia Woolf, all she's trying to do is kill herself. She's pathetic, okay? They shouldn't read those people at all, or they should be something last you experiment and you look into. So what I'm trying to say is the public schools, their goal is to demoralize you, make you a functional illiterate and stupid, okay? I like what Ayn Rand says. She says, men with a good philosophy of life do not try to escape into drunkenness. Yeah, when you're trying to achieve something, you don't want that silliness. A good book about the craziness and irresponsibility of the modern professional intellectuals is the book by Paul Johnson called Intellectuals. And a lot of these academics, too, they're fake. Like John Stuart Mill, he says, Mr. On Liberty. But he only wanted liberty for the English. He didn't want it for the Irish, for my ancestors. He didn't want it for the people from India. Okay? So they don't tell you the good stuff in a college. All right? And some of the other things I would say, like this attitude stuff, if you look at like these, communist countries, okay, they suck. They suck at art, anything, creative. And if you look at the 1800s in Russia, okay, they produced tons of great writers. Fyodor Dostoevsky's the best one. Leo Tolstoy's famous. He's more descriptive, as Ayn Rand described him. He's a so-called naturalist, realist. Not a good style, okay? Tolstoy's totally overrated. He's sort of a big jerk. But he still could describe things very well. Turgenev, Gogol, okay? Anton Chekhov, Pushkin. They had a lot of good writers. They had a lot of good painters. Okay, then you look at the 1900s. They didn't produce anything. There's not a single good book that I'm aware of that came out of Russia other than the ones that made fun of Soviet communism. There was Gulag Archipelago, A Day in the Life of, I think it's Ivan Denisovich or Denis Denisovich by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, Boris Pasternak with Brothers Zhivago, Boris Pasternak with Dr. Zhivago, excuse me. Okay, then there was also Mikhail Bulgakov, and that's about it. Okay, almost nothing came out of Soviet Russia, except things that made fun of it. All right, no good music, none. And a little tiny country like England, they produced lots of great music, and especially rock and roll in the 1960s and 70s. Greatest heavy metal band ever, Iron Maiden. I think Ritchie Blackmore and Rainbow came out of there too. That's what it meant. Okay. United States, with only 1/7 the population of all the commie countries, produced more great movies. scientific discoveries, great books, great songs than all of the common countries times 10. They suck at creativity. They suck at art because they always have a regimented, censored, you know, and the people are demoralized and poor, you know, like John Dos Passos says. Socialism, communism, not only does it stink for creativity, it can't even produce food. Everybody's starving and poor. Okay, we talked about the regulatory DNA. We're different than chimps. Okay, so what makes a person really creative and successful at academic and creative, artistic, intellectual endeavors is that they love their subject. You know, I talked about John Wolfgang von Goethe in the book Sorrows of the Young Werther, where he was in love with Charlotte. You know, he would write letters to his friend Wilhelm. This is about 1800. I love the way she walks, the way she talks, the way she dresses, the way she interacts with her siblings, the way she moves. Okay, well, fall in love with biology like that, and you'll be great at it. Okay, the best geniuses like Michelangelo and Bach, they're often motivated by a love for God. You know, Michelangelo would write, "I do all my things out of a love for God, a belief in God, I trust in Him." Bach, every composition for the glory of God. And you'll see that over and over. The greatest people who ever lived, the absolutely magnificent creative artists, they were inspired by Christianity. That's pretty routine. Okay? And so that's another reason why if you want to be a great creative artist, it's a good thing to associate yourself well and to understand it. And you'll let people tell me, oh, you love Ayn Rand so much, she's not a Christian. Ayn Rand, even though she's not a Christian, I say she's a closet Christian because all she would do is praise nonstop how much she loved all the Christian writers. The best book ever, she says, is Quo Vadis by Henry Sienkiewicz about early Christianity, okay? She loved Victor Hugo, said he's the greatest novelist of all time. The next best, Fyodor Dostoevsky. They're intensely Christian writers. And she'd go on and on about other Christian writers as well. Okay, let's see. The best geniuses want to understand how the world works. Albert Einstein, quote, "The grand aim of science is to cover the greatest number of facts from the smallest number of theories. Upon making a new discovery, some geniuses feel like they are one with the universe." So here's a question. What did the Buddha say to the hot dog vendor? Make me one with everything, okay? Part of being a creative artist, an expert, is you're going to feel a sense of destiny, but you're also going to have a lot of setbacks that you have to overcome and endure. So having a sense of destiny makes you better able to handle that. Here's a good quote by Carl Jung. "From the beginning, I had a sense of destiny, as though my life was assigned to me by fate, and it had to be fulfilled. This gave me an inner security. This gave me the strength to go my own way. Often I had the feeling that in all decisive matters I was no longer among men, but was alone with God." That's Carl Jung. Okay, that's a good quote, and that gives you resilience and strength. That's why religious people are so much stronger, so much healthier. And I can also tell you, I like the Schopenhauer quote that forget about trying to be happy. It's not going to happen. That for a man to be happy, what he should do is just devote himself to his cause, and that will lead him to be happy because he'll respect himself. So he said, forget about a happy life. Try to have a heroic life. And like the Watson quote on happiness, a horse is happy when it runs. An animal's happy when it does what it's destined to do. Okay, and I'll just give you an example. My kid, about 3 years ago, he comes up to me and he says, "Dad, why are you so happy? You're like the happiest person in the family, even though you have the worst life." He goes, "Your life sucks. All you do is work all the time in the hospital. You come home and then you write a book or you make a YouTube video. You almost never do anything. Your life sucks. I would hate your life. Why don't you go to the beach with mommy? Why don't you, go do something social?" And I'm like, you know what? God made me what I am. I know who I am. And He made me an academic genius, and I want to write books. I want to make my YouTube videos. That's what I want to do. I'm happy because I'm doing what I believe I should be doing. I'm fulfilling my destiny. Okay, that makes me happy. And he's like, "I don't know, Dad. Your life sucks." All right, so a couple more things here. Okay, now a quote from Frank Smith. This guy's a really good writer on intellectual development. He says, this is from his book, Insult to Intelligence. "Schools are good for collecting degrees. You need to get a college and a grad school degree for lots of jobs. You also need to develop your intellect, and schools are not good for developing intellect. Despite romantic notions to the contrary, schools and universities are not good places of learning." Okay, then we got a quote from, I think this is Ralph Waldo Emerson from the American Scholar essay. "The college, the school of art, the institution of any kind, they stop with the past. This is good, they say. Let us hold by this. They pin me down. They look backward, not forward. Genius looks forward. Man hopes. Genius creates." It's a really good essay, American Scholar. Okay, here's another good quote. This one's by Ludwig von Mises. He says, "Innovators and creative geniuses, they cannot be reared in schools. They are precisely the men who defy what the school has taught them. Education rears disciples, imitators, routinists. not pioneers of new ideas and creative geniuses. The schools are not nurseries of progress and improvement, but conservatories of tradition, of unvarying modes of thought. The first thing a genius needs is to breathe free air. Okay, Ludwig von Mises. And basically, intellectual development is something you do on your own. You can take advantage of a school. Like, let's say a school gives you a writing assignment. Most of the writing assignments I've seen for high school and college kids are pretty stupid. They're kind of tedious, boring, even, disgusting and immoral. Okay, I've seen them. But what you could do is you say, okay, I got to write this paper, but what I'll do is I'll turn it into an experiment to practice using rhetoric forms. So use your rhetoric forms. And that way, even though you have to do the paper, you can get something out of it, make it something useful rather than a waste of time. And there'll be a lot of situations like that.